Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar from Varnish Software on how to bring Varnish Enterprise into an existing CDN setup. My name's Ian Vaughan and I work in product marketing here at Varnish, and I'll be hosting today's session. But for the core of the webinar, we'll be joined by Ariana Iondio, one of our senior field engineers, who will go through some of the technical aspects of creating a hybrid CDN using Varnish CDN components. She's highly experienced at working with enterprise organizations, implementing these sorts of mixed CDN setups. And she'll be able to provide some serious insight into how to do it and how to gain the most from adding Varnish to your content delivery infrastructure. We'll be talking about the reasons you might want to consider doing this, the benefits to be gained from doing so, as well as discussing the wider CDN and streaming landscape as it stands today. There'll also be time for a Q&A session at the end, so if you have any questions, please do put them in the question box on your screen and we will answer them at the end of the session. So just to go through the schedule for today's webinar, we're going to run through the reasons you would use a CDN in the first place and the various challenges they can solve. A lot of you on the call will be experienced in the sort of CDN world already, so we'll just quickly run through that and then go into a discussion of hosted CDNs as compared with hybrid CDN approaches, why they're different, when to use one setup over another, and how to make that transition to a hybrid CDN mix. This will involve, of course, an explanation of how Varnish DIY CDN can provide benefits across the content delivery spectrum, so including origin protection and cost management. And then there's the Q&A at the end, as I mentioned, so to answer any questions you might have on the stuff you've seen in the webinar. First, let's quickly take a look about who we are and what it is that Varnish Software do. So we're a leader in large-scale content delivery solutions. We develop and provide powerful caching technology that's used by some of the world's largest content providers and businesses to really deliver super fast web and streaming experiences for potentially huge audiences, but without any downtime or loss of performance caused by having to deal with potentially huge numbers of simultaneous viewers or visitors. So it's really solving a very modern challenge of delivering things like HD video globally, perhaps to unpredictable audience numbers with minimal latency and without overloading the core infrastructure with all these requests that are coming in. We'll go through a bit more about how the tech works in a moment. We're founded in 2010 and has origins in the open source world, but now operates globally with offices all over the world, but headquartered in Stockholm. And the core technology, which is called Varnish Enterprise, is available for on-premise, cloud, and hybrid environments. It comes packaged into 3 separate software products. These are all optimized for different content delivery challenges. So the streaming server, which is for delivering live OTT, video on demand, and UHD video. DIY CDN, which will be the one we're focusing on today, which is about building customized CDNs using pre-built, pre-optimized components. And web and API acceleration, which is for delivering dynamic, static, and personalized web content. So these 3 solutions are all about being able to deliver content to wherever the user is, whenever they request it, and no matter how many other people are simultaneously requesting this content. And here's a few of on the bottom of the slide, there's a few of the enterprises we work with for all sorts of content delivery challenges, really. Obviously, it's quite a wide range of industries and sectors, so it kind of shows, I guess, the versatility of Varnish Enterprise, being able to solve a multitude of different challenges in this space. So just a bit about the actual technology now, so Varnish Enterprise. Some of you on the call will obviously be very familiar with this. You may already be using it in some aspect of your content delivery infrastructure. But for those of you who may not be totally familiar, if you're just sort of at the initial stages of learning about Varnish Enterprise, It's essentially a powerful web cache and reverse proxy. So it functions as a caching layer that sits between your web servers and your users, taking a copy of content, passing through it the first time a user visits your website or streaming service. So future requests for this content can basically be served by the cache instead of being sent all the way back to the origin servers again. And this is why it reduces bandwidth requirements and obviously the back end load on the servers, while also improving those client response times. And so the result obviously is super fast content delivery that keeps your end users happy, while also needing fewer back-end resources and also adding a layer of protection for those origin servers. So you're able to stay online, keep providing content really quickly, responsively, while also managing those bandwidth costs that potentially go up really quickly when you're dealing with large audiences. And it's completely flexible, so it's able to cache anything HTTP. So it's useful for a whole range of purposes, including websites, video on demand, live TV, and so on. And it's designed for extreme performance, so sub-millisecond website response times, able to handle 100,000 requests a second, and also you're able to get 150 gigabits per second from a single server, just a normal off-the-shelf server. So it's some of the highest performing technology out there really for content delivery. It's certainly most resource efficient thanks to its sort of open source development history and that flexibility that comes with that sort of development process. The Varnish Enterprise is really optimized for tier one organizations, so the enterprise, because it's providing the features and functionality and the support that larger businesses like that require when they're investing in any technology. So things like you're able to get greater performance out of the software. It includes more features, so things like massive edge storage, so you're able to store 100 terabytes at the edge, much closer to users, and persistence of the cache. There's enhanced security, so this includes a web application firewall, front and back end TLS, and cache encryption. So this is focused on those businesses which maybe have greater regulatory obligations and need to demonstrate compliance with any of the new regulations that are here, really securing any user data that's traveling through your infrastructure and across the internet. And one important aspect of Varnish Enterprise is the fact that we offer 24/7, 365 support, including short SLAs. So for any troubleshooting you may have, we have a team of world-leading experts really ready to support. And they've been involved in Varnish since the very beginning, and they're really the best in their field in terms of caching and the content delivery space, and they're very hands-on with like a wide range of deployments. So highly experienced team behind any deployment of Varnish Enterprise. And this includes professional services as well. So we can help design, size, and implement Varnish Enterprise in any sort of complex environment. So it's really catering to that need within larger organizations who maybe the ability to deliver any content quickly and reliable is actually maybe critical to their revenue and reputation. So it's just super important to get it right and make sure it's reliable, whatever service is being provided, whether it's TV or a high traffic website. So that's a short summary of what we do here at Varnish Software and what the technology is all about. Of course, if you have any further questions about Varnish in general, you could ask in the Q&A box, or you can get in touch via our website as well, so we can get back to you. But for now, I'm going to pass you over to Ariana, who can talk about CDNs and how Varnish Enterprise can be brought into your existing CDN infrastructure. So if you bear with me one moment, I'll just pass you over.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. So you should be able to see my screen now. please speak out loud if you can't hear me or if you do not see my screen. It's a slide which says, let's talk CDNs. Thank you, Ian. Hi, everyone. It's Arianna here. As Ian presented me, I am one of the Varnish engineers. I've been working for Varnish for almost 6 years now, and I've seen a bit of a different CDN setups, from full private CDN to commercial CDN, and then everything in between in that spectrum. Now we're moving into the, let's say, the second part of the webinar, and this will be more technical than introduction. And today's topic really is about CDN. So first of all, what do we refer to when we talk about a CDN and what it is? So a CDN is a content delivery network, and we use it to deliver content on a global scale most of the time. Sometimes you can also deliver, you may have the need to deliver content for very specific region. That's still a CDN. You don't necessarily have to have your content deliver in every single content to call yourself as a CDN. But as long as you have a network in place and different data center, we are talking CDN. Most of the time today, when we do refer to CDNs, we refer also to live and video on-demand content. But CDNs are, back in the days, were used also for, and today as well, were used for e-commerces, websites, and more in general for any kind of content you can think of related to websites and HTTP or HTTPS. So from a technical point of view, when we refer to a CDN, we are basically referring to a network and different data centers. So the network is represented with blue arrows, and the different data centers, which are called points of presence, POPs, are, it's just hardware really. They are a set of servers you do distribute in different regions. And the goal of this set of servers is to make sure that the content is the closest possible to the end users, so that you can leverage both the network, but also the geographical distance. And you aim to try to reduce that, so your latency decrease and your quality of experience for your end users increase instead. So the typical pipeline for video delivery, when we refer to the CDN, looks like this one. Let's divide it into 3 different fragments. So on the right, we have the clients, which is basically any of us, anyone accessing the internet or watching video on demand or watching live content using the internet network. On the left, we have the chunk where the content is generated. And if it is video on demand, then of course the video is recorded in a studio, is encoded offline, and it is stored in an origin server or what we define also as backend as well. If the video is live, this is slightly more challenging in terms of latency, and it's more time sensitive, because when we are recording a live event, the whole pipeline starts from the cameraman himself or herself. The person will be recording the live event. The camera is then connected to a real-time encoder, and the content will be divided into different packages and stored in an origin server. In between, linking between where the content is created and where the content is indeed consumed, and which is really the client side, we have the so-called CDN, the content delivery network. And the content delivery network makes sure that we are able to deliver the video content from where it is created to the end users. Like, I'm gonna explain, in a second, why we have two different layers, why we have an origin shield or mid-tier cache, or allow me to call it also as storage cache, and then we have an edge cache layer as well. I will explain it in a second. So this was really the introduction to what is a CDN, why we need it, why we use it. And today, when we refer to CDN, we do refer to hosted CDN, or I call them commercial CDN as well, because they sell services. And I've started calling them legacy. I started calling them legacy CDN as well. How do they work? They are the link in between the origin server and the end user. A commercial CDN really provides a service. I'm quite sure that many of you have already used a commercial CDN, so you most likely know that you refer to those companies, and you pay for the network you use, and you pay for the storage you use. What really happens is that you are giving away your content to the commercial CDN provider. You're telling someone else, that's my content, please take it and make sure you can handle it and deliver to whomever is requesting it. This works quite well. It does the job because it delivers content to the users. It has a distributed and global presence, which is really, really important, well, today, because the goal of a CDN really is to reduce the latency, increase the quality of experience for the end user. And the more POPs or points of presence a commercial CDN has, the better the performance will be in the end. At the same time, this again will be extremely important also for the upcoming 5G technology, because with 5G technology, we aim to try to place our content as close as possible to the end user. So overall, really, a commercial CDN does what it is supposed to be doing, delivering content and doing it well. But at the same time, you have no overview on what's going on in that commercial CDN. You have no overview on your content because someone else is handling your content on your behalf. So overall, you have some pros and some cons when we do refer to hosted CDN. So why have I called a hosted CDN a legacy CDN? So that's really the CDN timeline. If you have a look at it, CDN were born back in the days together with the internet. And the goal back in the day was just to deliver content from one continent to another. Latency was not an issue, internet was not so popular, and there was no technology such as, for example, streaming or user personalization was not known back in the days. And some of the commercial CDN you can think of today are still using the same technology as the regional CDN implemented back in the days together with the internet. But then, of course, companies have started adopting the internet. E-commerce arose in late 90s, beginning of 2000, and most companies started having a presence on the internet, and that's where the CDN started. That's when the CDN started booming, and step by step, you can easily think of why companies have started adopting multi-CDN approach. Think, for example, to a company which may have a global presence, and this company needs to sell products, services, or streaming to the US, Europe, and China. Most likely, this company will be picking 3 different commercial CDN for the 3 different continents it has to deliver to, and that's called multi-CDN approach. And then from a multi-CDN approach, we have slowly moved into a private and do-it-yourself CDN, and that's all related to cost efficiency, but also to the increasing user personalization, and also the increasing or the change, I'd say the change of technology. For example, streaming is a fairly new technology, but it does consume a lot of network, and it does require a lot of storage. So the market has seen this trend towards private technology. So really the question is, why have we seen this trend? Why have we moved from legacy, full 100% commercial CDN to a private CDN? Really the answer is that a private CDN is really cost effective in the long term. I'm gonna talk as pre-sales engineer right now, and cost really is one of the most challenging parts for a company. Like when we build CDN, or really when I take part in project where we aim to replace a commercial CDN with a private CDN, or even we are trying to build a full private CDN, my suggestion is always to make sure that the infrastructure we're building today will be as expensive as it is today in 5 years from now. I'll give you an example. So let's say you are delivering live and video on demand content. If you do rely on a commercial CDN, you will be billed based on the storage you use, the bandwidth you consume, and the number of transactions or requests the CDN sees for your content. So really it means that the more successful you are, or the more successful your business is, the higher the bill will be, and the margin will remain the same over time. And for live and video on demand content, really you do expect the video on demand library to grow over time, which means that you're gonna consume or use more storage from a commercial CDN, which really means that in the end, from 2, 3, 5 years from now, your bill can only grow. And that's really one of the main reasons why many companies have decided to try to implement or introduce Varnish in their commercial CDN setup. Because when you implement a Varnish CDN solution, you know ahead what your cost will be. Varnish doesn't really bill based on the storage you use, or the bandwidth you consume, or the number of transactions your Varnish machine can handle in 1 second. So really that's one of the main reasons why companies have started investigating other solutions other than commercial CDN. But in general, there is a whole set of differences between a full commercial CDN and a private CDN. Of course, from both, we do expect to have availability all the time, and to be able to scale horizontally and vertically based on the content you have, and based on the incoming requests you might have. They both handle security very well. There are some commercial CDN really specialized in security. Varnish as well gives a lot of attention to security. I'm gonna mention a couple of things which are not strictly related to the webinar itself, but with Varnish you can encrypt your cache if you want to, or for example, or you can use a Varnish web application firewall as well. So that's just an example of the security Varnish can provide. And of course, you can use this different solution when building your private CDN. But again, if you do rely on a commercial CDN, you are giving away your content. You have no content control. You're handing your content to someone else and asking that person or that company to handle it on your behalf. With Varnish instead, you can achieve the same goal of a commercial CDN, but other than keeping your cost under control, you still have full content control, which is extremely important nowadays with user personalization, and where a millisecond really makes the difference in the content delivery world. So what do we offer in terms of CDN and what it is? What's really a Varnish do-it-yourself CDN? It is a full set of features and solution you can use to implement your own private CDN. So we offer you the software to build your own CDN. In return, you will have to find you will have to provide us machines and the network. But then we can take care of the software installation, and we can take care of the Varnish configuration as well. So when we refer to a Varnish do-it-yourself CDN, it means that you can build from zero your private CDN, but you can also implement your Varnish CDN aside of your commercial CDN. And what that happens, we do define it as a hybrid CDN, because you're using the best of really both worlds. You're using commercial CDN and you're using a private CDN as well. So really, how does it work? So do you remember, if you remember the third slide I showed you, the diagram or the typical pipeline for live and video on demand content delivery, I told you that in the CDN bit, we have two different layers. And I also told you that I would explain you soon why we have two different layers. And here we are. So first of all, as you can see, we have a set of users on top, and then we have the origin server at the bottom in orange. Now we have a set of Varnish machine, and that's called the origin shield or mid-tier cache or storage cache. Call it as you want it. This set of Varnish machine sits really close to the origin server. Its goal is to protect the origin server. And that's because the origin server is where you are storing your content, and the content is one of the most important links you have in your whole pipeline. Without content, you can't deliver anything. If you do not deliver anything, there is no business at all. So this Varnish layer, the goal of this Varnish layer is to protect your origin shield, but at the same time, given we want to avoid unnecessary backend connections, this layer will try to cache as much content as possible. So from a technical point of view, when I try to when I work on projects where we need to implement CDNs, full private or hybrid CDN, really the goal for the first year is to try to cache, if not all the complete VoD library, at least the 50% of this VoD library. The reason why we try to cache as much as we can on this layer, like today, it is because in the next 5 years, your VoD library and your content will grow. And in order to be future-proof and avoid unnecessary backend connection, we need to be able to store as much as we can on the Varnish layer. And that's why I also define this layer as storage layer, because it will act as a secondary backend, but without the latency and the use of resources a real backend needs instead. So this layer will be caching using disk. It's called the feature which enables you to cache using disk is called Massive Storage Engine. And the reason why we're using this is because this persists over restarts, which means that if you need to run maintenance on a server, or if your server crashes by mistake or by error or any other issue, you can still recover your cache after a restart. And that's really important, because when we talk about video on demand, we talk about terabytes of content most of the time. And then, of course, given we are talking about a CDN setup, and we're talking about different points of presence distributed in different regions, high availability or replication is fundamental. With VHA, Varnish High Availability, you can replicate content from one Varnish machine to another, but you can also replicate content from one point of presence to another. And you don't have to go through the origin server. So once a single Varnish machine has the content in cache, that piece of content can be replicated on a global scale. So this layer will protect and store and cache as much content as possible. But of course, we also need another layer closer to the end users, like geographically closer to the end users. So this layer is the very last leg. And this layer needs to be fast and reliable all the time, because that's where we try to cache that's where we cache the live content. Live content won't be stored on this black layer, but it will only be stored on this orange layer, because with live content, we don't want to introduce unnecessary latency. And on this orange layer, we also going to cache the most requested and the most requested content from your VoD library, or the so-called hot content. The reason why we place this layer, which we call edge layer, or the goal of this edge layer is to deliver content fast to the end users. That's really where we do the full performance. To do caching on this layer, we are going to use memory instead, because it is fast, it's reliable, it's faster than disk, it just does the job. And then, of course, you in the set of features you have when implemented your do-it-yourself CDN, you also have the chances to be able to terminate and understand HTTPS connection, which is really, I'd say it is really the new standard. Nowadays, most of the companies do rely on HTTPS other than HTTP. And to terminate HTTPS, we use a daemon called hitch. Now, very important bit, how do we link this edge layer with this origin shell layer? So what happens if content is not cached on this layer? Varnish will have to go to the black layer, but Varnish is also pretty clever, and you can implement a prefetch logic in there. Another example, like let's say we are watching a video. Nowadays, when we deliver video, the video is divided into different fragments. So you have fragment 0, and that's where the video starts. Then you have fragment 1, fragment 2, and fragment 3. So if the user requests fragment 0, Varnish is clever enough to understand that if fragment number 1 is not already in cache, it needs to be fetched from the other Varnish layer. So this Varnish edge layer will make sure to have in cache the most requested content, but also what it may be requested by the user. Because if we're watching fragment number 0, most likely we will be watching also fragment number 1, fragment number 2, and fragment number 3. So the prefetch here logic really plays the role of a caching pre-warm. And we make sure we always have all the content we really need, or all the content the user may be requesting on this edge layer as well. And then, of course, given we are talking about CDN, we're talking about different points of presence distributed in different continents, region, and distributed globally, you also need to use the Varnish Administration Console, the custom statistics, which are tools which allows you to deploy logic to the different nodes, making sure that your Varnish installation are doing just fine and making sure that everything is really working as expected. So it is an administration tool, and of course it provides you an update, an overview on your Varnish setup. But now, really, now that we have understood what a CDN is, how it works, and how you can implement it using Varnish, how do we move away from a commercial CDN and start implementing a private CDN? Of course, it's not realistic to say that you can switch off your commercial CDN today and switch on your private Varnish CDN tomorrow morning. So we need to take it step by step, and usually an hybrid CDN approach is the best way to proceed to either decide in the end to move away from the commercial CDN or to adopt an hybrid approach as well. So why would you do it? So first of all, if you do implement Varnish do-it-yourself CDN, you can distribute the traffic not only using the commercial CDN you have, but you can take Varnish into the picture. So today, let's say you have a full commercial CDN approach. That's how your traffic distribution would look like. You have a CDN 1, CDN 2, CDN 3, and the traffic is distributed among those 3 different CDN. Please do know that CDN 1 doesn't talk to CDN 2, and CDN 2, none of them talk to each other, which means that if we are requesting content A to the CDN 1 and CDN 1 doesn't have it in cache, it will go to the backend and fetch it. If another user requests content A to the CDN number 2 and CDN number 2 doesn't have it in cache, again, it will trigger another backend request. And the same for CDN 3. So for the same piece of content, you may have 3 different backend requests, which really is just, it is a waste of resources and also a bit of a waste of time for the end user. While if you do introduce Varnish in the picture, you still have the same traffic, which may be redistributed over now 4 different CDNs instead of 3. And if you notice it, Varnish, like you introducing Varnish in the picture, you will reduce the number of backend requests you're going to have. Because in a scenario as the previous one, where this 3 different users going to 3 different CDNs are requesting the same piece of content, the CDN will indeed trigger a backend request, but it will be Varnish this time to handle this request. So the backend will only see a single request coming from Varnish, and Varnish then will cache the content and distribute it to either the end users directly or to the CDN in place. As you can see, not only we are redistributing the traffic and making sure that Varnish can handle unexpected peak of traffic as well without a cost increase at all, but also we are protecting our backend. And this leads me to point number 2, like using Varnish as origin protection behind the CDN. So that's how the architecture would look like. Let's say you want to keep your commercial CDN, which is it is fine. Next to your commercial CDN, you may want to implement your do-it-yourself CDN with Varnish. And again, you're going to have an edge layer made of a different set of Varnish machine, which plays the same role as this commercial CDN. They're both facing users and they both need to make sure to deliver content to those users. But then again, you have a set of Varnish machine sitting right behind your Varnish edge layer and your commercial CDN, protecting the origin server and making sure that no unexpected load can kill your backend and can kill your content really. So sometimes you can think of, sometimes Varnish is really used as only as origin protection. So we have customers using commercial CDN facing the user, and then using Varnish to do most of the offloading for the backend request and the content as well. And that's usually also the very first step to start implementing your own private CDN. So first thing to do when you are using commercial CDN is to add a Varnish layer in between your commercial CDN and the origin server. Make sure that Varnish works as expected. And then slowly you're going to also introduce another Varnish layer. And this will complete the picture of a hybrid approach. But now, what happens if you don't really feel confident enough with your Varnish expertise? I hear this most of the time, really. Varnish is a beautiful technology, but to master it, it may require some time. I use Varnish every day. That's my job. I can define myself as a Varnish expert, but I do understand that most of our customers or companies using Varnish are using Varnish as one of the different softwares they use every day. So it becomes quite challenging for them to grow expertise on a very specific piece of software. So what we offer is a solution called Varnish Hubs. And with Varnish Hubs, you bring us your machines. You do provide the hardware, so servers, network, data center, and anything else you may be needing for a CDN. And we bring the Varnish expertise. We do run the Varnish installation, we do the Varnish configuration, and we make sure that your CDN is fully set up and functioning. And we do handle your Varnish CDN on your behalf. So what really happens with Varnish Hubs is that you still own the hardware. So you have full access to your machine, you have full access to the Varnish configuration, you have full access to the Varnish parameters, and so on. And if you need to apply changes or if you need to debug anything, you can do it. Machines are yours. You're totally free to handle them as you prefer. So the real difference here is that if you need to apply changes or if something unexpected happened with your CDN installation, you can rely on us, because we can help you debugging the machine, or perhaps you want to apply changes to the caching logic and you are quite unsure how to do it. We can do it on your behalf. So I'd say Varnish Hubs really sits a bit in between a full commercial CDN and a full private CDN. So where you still have access to your machines, you have control over your content, you have control on your hardware, on your server, on your network, on everything, because you do own it. We bring our expertise, really. So when you need us to help you, we're going to handle your Varnish installation. When you feel like confident enough to try to do it yourself, you're very much welcome to do it. So that's really the third option, and I say this third option works very well with those willing to move away from commercial CDN, but perhaps not confident enough of their Varnish experience. So that's really a very good compromise. So to conclude, I'll give you an example of a company which has implemented a full private CDN using Varnish. So SFR is a French company. It's a pretty big telecom company in France. Back in the days, they were using a commercial CDN, but they started investigating other solution. Please read Varnish. When the cost arose and the costs were increasing really too much. And SFR was one of the first to implement a full private CDN. Like today, they are among the 10 most visited websites in France. Cedexis has rated them as #1 CDN in France, and today SFR is going 100% using a Varnish do-it CDN approach, and that's a telco really. So as you can imagine, telco are reselling services as well, which means they have a CDN in place, and most likely they use this CDN for their customers as well. So thank you for your attention. It's now time for some Q&A, which I hope you do have. Let me just stop screen sharing. Yeah, now you should not be able to see anything. Okay.
Hi, Arian. I'll have a look at some questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. That was really good, really informative. We had a few questions come in, so I'll just take a look at some.
Thank you.
So, got a couple of questions actually about, so if they're not hosting, if they're taking on a hybrid or private CDN with Varnish, what sorts of resources will they need to implement that?
Yeah, okay. So just to repeat for everyone, the question is around what do we need if we want to build our private CDN? So for a CDN, really you need to have a network, so an internet connection. You need to have data centers, and you need to have switches and routers distributed globally. So what happens, and what we usually suggest when implementing a private CDN, is that before coming to us and speak to me or one of my colleagues to implement a private CDN, you will need to set up a contract with an internet provider so that you can have internet connectivity from one data center to another. And this internet provider, most of the time, they also provide data centers and servers. So really, from a technical point of view, you need a fiber cable connecting one laptop to another. But then, of course, this becomes a bit more commercial oriented when you need to connect a data center in Europe with a data center in the US, for example. But once you have an agreement in place with an internet provider, and you have the network and you have machines, then you can come to us and we can proceed with the Varnish installation. And we're going to install Varnish on the servers you have in your data centers. And once we have installed Varnish, then the trick really is done. So I'd say you need content, you need an agreement with an internet provider for network and data center, and then you can come to us and we can install Varnish. So really it's fairly quick.
Okay, excellent, thank you. We'll just have a look at some more questions. So a question about where the cost savings come from. So if this is a sort of cost effective in the long-term model, where are these cost savings coming from? And what sort of amounts are sort of available to be saved?
Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned from one of the slides, commercial CDN, they bill based on the bandwidth you consume, they bill based on the storage you use, and on the number of transactions your content sees going through the CDN. So like today, for example, if you need to deliver a video, your bandwidth cost will grow based on the bit rates you are delivering video to the users. Of course, the higher the quality of the video is, the most expensive the bandwidth will be. So that's an example from a commercial CDN. If you do rely on a private CDN, as I said with the previous answer, you will have an agreement in place with an internet provider, and they don't charge. Usually, they don't charge you based on the bandwidth you consume, but with the internet provider, you're going to negotiate how much bandwidth you will have available. So how if it's a matter of a 1 gigabit per second, if we're talking about 10 gigabits per second, or if we're talking about 100 gigabits per second, that's what you will be negotiating with the internet provider. So as long as you are within the limits you have agreed with the internet provider, you won't be charged extra. And if you go beyond the limits, the internet provider will you just won't have the physical fiber to be able to go beyond the limits. So you will definitely save in bandwidth, but you will also save in storage, because a commercial CDN, of course, the most you cache, the more you will be charged. While again, if you set up an agreement with an ISP, you're gonna buy a set of servers from the data center, and usually the storage you will have from this set of servers is in the end cheaper than what you will be billed from a commercial CDN. One thing, when I refer to commercial CDN, I actually also refer to cloud solution as well, because again, cloud solution, they do provide data center globally distributed, but again, you will pay for the machine, and you will also pay for the number of transactions the machine experience. And there is another trick sometimes you get when you buy cloud machines. They say you're buying storage and you're buying network, but really, if you read in between the lines, most of the time it says that the network may be up to 10 gigabits per second, which really means that if the cloud provider has enough bandwidth, you can use it. If it is a very crowded time of the day and the bandwidth is not enough, then you'll be able to use what's left from the network. So there is no way you can control the bandwidth availability when you buy from a cloud provider, really. Any other question?
Yeah, I think we've got time for just one more. I'll just have a look. So a question about how to, if we're using Varnish, how to keep content delivery secure when moving to a private CDN model. Because obviously some commercial CDNs come with built-in firewalls, for example.
Yeah, correct. Like most of the commercial CDN have a built-in web firewall application, of course. You can do the same as Varnish. It's lately, like right before Christmas, we launched the Varnish web application firewall, which really works as any other firewall, but it has been load tested to make sure that it could keep up with the load of Varnish machine can keep up with. This web application firewall by Varnish has been implemented fully by us, and it is based on mode security. So it's how does it work? Really it is just a matter of installing a package on a machine. By default, you will be covered for the 10 attack rules recognized by the OWASP. And by default, the Varnish web application firewall won't be blocking any traffic, but it will be monitoring the traffic. And once you are secure that what is marked as malicious or potentially dangerous is indeed what you would like to block, then you can enable the web application firewall to blocking not welcome incoming requests. If I may say, I've been using the web application firewall, and it is fairly amazing how in depth the log or the audit log file could go. Like, you can really analyze step by step what a request is indeed requesting to Varnish, and based on that you can draft your own strategy to either block or allow traffic going from one Varnish machine to another, or even to the origin server. Is there any other question we may be answering now? Let me see.
We've had a few more questions come in, but I think we are out of time for today.
Okay.
So thank you so much for answering those ones, and for talking through the CDN setup earlier. Thank you everyone else for joining as well. If we didn't manage to reach your question, we'll get in touch with you afterwards to help you out there. And if anyone else has any further questions or comments on the session we've had today, please do get in touch with us via our email addresses on the screen or through our website. And we will make a recording of this available to you shortly afterwards, should you want to rewatch any parts of it as well. But please do get in touch if you would like any further information. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Ariana, again for speaking on the session. I think that was a really insightful and informative session about CDNs. So thank you, and hope to talk to all of you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Bye.